Hi friends, it's Kathleen, and today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite things when it comes to reading, which is when you completely fall in love with a book that you never expected that you would like. So the books I'm talking about today are ones that I had almost zero expectations for. Either I thought I wouldn't like them whatsoever, or I just had no thoughts that they would be anything special. A couple of them were really hyped up, so I didn't think they would be any good, and then other ones I'd actually read really negative reviews about, so I had very little expectations in that regard, but I was very pleasantly surprised with every single book that I'm about to show you guys. And without further ado, let's just get into them. The first book that I would say I never expected I would like is actually one that I read a bunch of negative things about. Yes, there's a lot of positive things about this series out there too, but at the time, I was really just reading Goodreads reviews, and some of the top reviews on this were not good, and I just picked it up one day at work anyway because I thought I'd give it a go. I didn't pick it up to read though for a long time. It just sat on my shelf, and then one day I got really bored with an arc I was reading that I wasn't liking at all, so I decided I would give this a try, and that book was Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This story is about a future cyborg Cinderella in a place called New Beijing, where cyborgs are persecuted and there is an evil queen on the moon who wants to take over Earth and spread a disease, and it follows a different heroine every single book. They're all fairy tale characters that have been remodeled for a sort of futuristic world. It's so cool. I love this series, and I went into it thinking I was going to hate it. I thought it would be boring, I thought it would be uninteresting, and to be honest, the first few chapters aren't that exciting. But then once I got into it, I binge read the whole series in I think 2 weeks, and the last book's pretty long, so it wasn't a super small accomplishment. I love this series so much that it put me into a drastic reading slump after I finished it. I think it was at least another 2-3 weeks before I read anything after I finished Winter because I was so in love with it. This series features my all-time favorite trope, which is when 5-6 people who hate each other and would never ever get along in the real world have to come together and work to save the world, and then they form inseparable bonds. That's my favorite thing ever, and this book is chock full of it. It's such a hard sell sometimes because it sounds kind of weird when you describe it, but at the same time it's so entertaining and so much fun, and I think this is a great book for people just getting into teen books because the content isn't too mature. I adore this book and I'm so happy I gave it a chance. So the next book I have here is one that is a bit of a problematic fave, but I love it and I don't want to lie and say I don't love it. And that's Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. And look, it has my stat pick sticker on it. If you don't know, this book follows a man named Will Traynor who is paralyzed from the neck down after a car accident, and the woman named Louisa Clark who gets a job working for him as his caretaker for 6 months after she loses her job at a cafe. And Louisa figures out pretty quickly that he plans to have an assisted suicide in Switzerland, and she decides that she's going to find reasons for him to live and make his life worth living. Now, I love this book. I had such an emotional reaction to it, and I think that's part of why I loved it so much. It was 1:53 a.m. and I was in my grandmother's guest room and I was sobbing my eyes out. And that's super embarrassing, but it is true. I cried so hard at this book. And I did not cry when Dobby died. I've never ever cried at a book before this one. And I can't even explain exactly what it was, except that it just struck some sort of chord in me. I think it really had this theme of whether love can ever be enough for people and whether we can ever love somebody enough to save them. And this book has sort of helped me realize that maybe we can't always, but that doesn't mean that love doesn't matter or it's not relevant. I know there are totally issues surrounding this book. A lot of people have talked about how it has a bit of an ableist message. It basically says that a life with a disability is a half-life, it's not worth living. And I didn't personally feel that way when I read it, but again, I'm not a person with a disability, so I'm not necessarily the best person to speak about this. But it wasn't the message I personally took. And I can't deny that I absolutely love this book. I also think it's worth being aware of the problems surrounding it so that you don't go into it expecting something it's not. This next book is one that I had zero expectations going into it. I didn't even remember requesting this book, but apparently I did. This was an arc sent to me by Indigo Books and Music Inc., so that was really nice of them to send it to me. But when I got it, I kind of thought, what's that? I had no clue, and then I remembered it was this book that was kind of pitched as a mystery, and so I thought, oh, I'm not gonna like that. I don't read mysteries. What is this? But that book is The 100 Lies of Lizzie Lovett by Chelsea Sidoti. So this book is one that I've seen some mixed things about out there, and I totally get why. In a sense, it's also a bit of problematic faith, just a little bit, just a little bit. It's one of those books that I think is not for everybody at all, and I didn't think it was going to be for me. So first of all, it's not a mystery. It's really a journey of self-discovery. It's about this girl named Hawthorne who is obsessed with this girl named Lizzie Lovett, who is this perfect girl who lives in town, and she disappears one day mysteriously. And Hawthorne has this very idealized version of her in her head. She imagines that she's off living this glamorous lifestyle. But she also becomes obsessed with infiltrating herself into Lizzie's life. So she starts getting a job at the place where Lizzie worked, and she hangs out with her boyfriend. And there is this overarching mystery of what happened to Lizzie, but I wouldn't say the mystery is what drives this book. It's really Hawthorne's own obsession with what's happening and her own realization that she just wants there to be more to the world than what there is. And that's really what struck me in this book. I think it has a lot of heart, and I love books that have heart. This book is not perfect by any means. It has this weird plot where Hawthorne thinks she's a werewolf. It has a bit of girl hate, which I'm not a fan of. It didn't really resolve that issue at all. And it has a protagonist that a lot of people probably aren't gonna like, but it got to me. I felt for her so much. I really understood her pain. I saw how lonely she was, and I related to her even though I didn't want to. I think it's a hidden gem, and I really enjoyed it, and I think it's worth giving a shot. So the next book here was another ARC that was sent to me a while back by Indigo Books and Music Inc. And this is another one where I totally forgot what it was about before I went into it. And this is not even a problematic fave at all. It's just a fave. That book is Things I Should Have Known by Clara Zubnik. This book is so great. It's about a girl named Chloe whose sister has autism, and she decides that she wants her sister to have a boyfriend. So she sets her up with this other boy in her sister's class, but it turns out that that boy is the brother of a boy in Chloe's class who she's not really a fan of. This book has characters with autism that are depicted accurately and honestly. It has a popular character that isn't condemned for having a social life and having a boyfriend. It has a cute romance. It has diversity where I wasn't expecting it. It has pretty much everything I could want in a YA contemporary, and I'm so happy that I found it, and I want more people to discover it as well. The final book on this list is a bit of an honorary mention because honestly, it's not really fair of me to say, oh, I didn't expect to love this when this is actually my favorite book ever. But when I actually look back and I think of the origins of me starting this book, I had no expectation that I would fall in love with it. My mother actually hates this book, and I was embarrassed to admit that I wanted to read it. And so I kind of thought that, oh, I would just kind of agree with my mom and we would have the same thoughts on it, but I totally didn't. And that book is Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Maud Montgomery. I found this book at the right time in my life. I was 11 years old, like Anne, and I just moved to the Maritimes. So this was the perfect story for me, and I was just touched by how heartwarming it was, how encouraging the story was. It really just made me feel like the world meant something and that there could be happiness and goodness to the world. When I reread Anne of Green Gables, I'm reminded of all the good that there is in the world, and it makes me want to add more to it. So that's a big part of the reason I love this book. And I think that if you're somebody who thinks, oh, it's going to be too sappy, it's going to be too silly, and that's kind of what I thought I was before reading it, give it a chance because it's amazing and it really just makes the world a better place, even when the world is trying desperately not to be. So those were all the books that I had absolutely no expectations that I would love. Like I said, this is my favorite thing in the world when I have zero plans to enjoy a book and it blows me away. I love that. I love discovering new things that I really never thought I would like. Let me know what some of the books are that you guys never expected to love but totally did, because I might check them out. And I hope you at least slightly enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you would like, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!